Good morning, nerds. Welcome to the latest installment of Unity Gameplay Basics. What we're going to be doing today is we are going to set up an animation controller, or an animator controller actually. And what that's going to do is that is going to allow us to go between different animations to make a player character look a little bit more realistic. Last time we learned how to make different animation sets, such as move left, move right, idle right, shoot right. Um, but they were all independent animations. What we're going to do this time is we're going to learn how to basically merge them all together into one animation set. So that way, as we move, we're facing the correct direction, we're playing the correct animation, everything looks the way we want it to look. So to get this started, what I've done here is I've already cleared out my set. So we are going to create a new game object. So we're going to do create empty. We're going to create we're going to name this guy player. I guess we might as well name this girl player because it is going to be a girl sprite. And we're going to go ahead and add in, we're going to start off by adding the sprite renderer. So sprite renderer is right here. And we're going to also add component for, actually we don't need to add component for that, we'll just drag it in. What we want to do here is we're going to go ahead and just give it a starting animation, and this first frame of idle is really pretty good. So if you have the sprite sheet that we used last time, I'm just going to take the first frame of it and drag it up into the sprite box. And now if we zoom in, we can see her, but she's a little tiny. So I'm going to move her more to the middle of towards the middle of the screen. She's a little bit up from the middle, but that's okay. And we are going to scale her up. So I'm going to scale her X and her Y. There's no need to scale Z because it's two-dimensional. And now she's looking pretty okay. Now, unlike last time when we did animation, if we run this, you are going to notice that she is not going to move. And she's just kind of sitting there. And the reason she's sitting there is the sprite renderer is really just only rendering a single frame, and so it's not really doing anything. What we're going to do instead is we're going to grab one of these frames of animation and we're going to put those in on top of that. So what I'm going to do is I've got my 6 different animation sets. Again, idle left, idle right, move left, move right, and shoot right. For now, because we've got our idling to the left, we're just going to drag that onto our player. So if we take this and we just drag it onto the player, and I'm doing that in one smooth movement. I'm not, so click and drag, you can see my, see the little icon there, it's trying to let go, and let go on it. It's not actually dragging the animation, it's dragging an animator on there, and it's assigning it. It's created one called player, and actually if we look in our file system down here, you can actually see the new animator controller, animator component, and it's called player. The nice thing is because I did default it with that idle left, if I run, you should see idle left go. And it is playing. Now, if you accidentally drug something wrong and it's playing a different animation, don't worry about that for right now. It'll get fixed in just a moment anyways, so you don't need to worry. So if you're shooting instead or running instead, don't worry about it. It's all good. As long as something is animating right here, you should see something moving. I don't care what it is. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and stop that. And we're gonna double click on our player controller, on our control animation controller, sorry. And that'll take us into the animator. Now this is an example of what we call a state machine. And it's called that because you've got a bunch of different states, that's the big rectangles. The colors do mean stuff, we'll talk about that in a second. And you've got a bunch of transitions, otherwise known as edges, that take you in between them. And mental model-wise, you can really think of this like a flowchart. So the arrows are decisions that decide which box we go into and when and why. And the individual stages are states, are individual animations and what they do when they get there. Okay, so The very, very first thing I'm going to do, and this is why I said it didn't really matter which one you started with, is drag the other ones in. So I already have green idle left. What I'm going to do here is grab the other ones, green idle right, my 2 moves, and my 2 shoots, and I'm just going to drag those up and in there, and we can see them all land in my state machine. And what I'm going to do is kind of arrange these. And what's going to be the most helpful for later is I'm going to kind of put my idle left up here. I'm going to put idle right up there. I'm going to put move left down a little bit because I want to leave some room. I want shoot in the middle. That'll actually come in really handy later. Move right, again, leaving room for shoot. Shoot left is going to go right in the little hole there, and shoot right. They don't have to be perfectly lined up. I try to keep it kind of clean, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot. So these are the different animations that we can play. And what I like to do, this is going to keep this a lot easier, is I'm going to take this any state and just kind of put it in the middle there where we can get to things. So what we need to do now is figure out the rules that are going to make us move between states. And so, for example, if we think about my left and my right, what I want to have happen is if I'm facing left, I want to do left, and if I'm not, if I'm facing right, I want to be over here. But it's really easier to think about these in terms of binaries, okay? And so I need to be able to, for programming purposes, I need to be able to break these down into simpler questions. I don't want to do, am I facing left or am I facing right? That's really 2 different questions. What I can do instead is think about this as one question, am I facing left? Because if I'm not facing left, I must be facing right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start thinking about this in terms of parameters. So up here on the top left, you've got a layers button, but you've also got a parameters button. If I click on parameters, I can click this little drop down, and I've got a whole bunch of options here. I've got float, int, bool, and trigger. And what I want here is a bool. Bool is for Boolean. It allows me to ask a yes or no question. And so I'm going to create a new Boolean, and I'm going to call it really just facing left. And I'm going to try to spell that better. If you do misspell it, you can kind of double click on it, just like you can with file names, and fix that. So I'm going to call that facing left. Then I'm going to think about this, and if I'm the next 2 I'm going to be thinking about is, am I standing still or am I moving? Okay, and so I'm going to create another bool called moving. And right now that's not true, and facing left is actually not true right now, but that's okay. We'll fix that. And then the last one that I want to do is when I shoot, shooting is interesting because I'm not going to be shooting over and over and over again. I'm going to be shooting whenever I shoot, I want it to play the shooting animation. And so for that, what we're going to do is actually use a trigger. So trigger, no pun intended there, is going to be called shoot, and that's going to be a little bit different. So now we need to think about how to get from point A to point B. And what I'm going to use is the any state for this because I don't have to worry about creating like these big nasty webs. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab my any state and I'm going to right click and say make transition. I'm going to go in, I'm going to click on green idle left, and that's going to create a transition. And what I'm going to do here is you don't really need to worry about much of these defaults, but what you do need to look at is conditions. I'm going to add a condition, and my first condition is I need to be facing left. So facing left is true. And my second one is going to be, so I'm just going to click plus again, is going to be moving as false. I only want to be facing or idling left if I'm facing left, but I'm not moving. Okay, and I can do the exact same thing for the other 4 states. So I'm going to make transition, or the other 3 states. And I'm going to add my transitions to all of these. And again, I'm going to add, why is that one looking different? Oh, there it goes. Okay, so I'm going to click on the transition arrow, and I'm going to click my plus sign. Again, I need facing left to be true, and I also need moving to be true. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to make a transition. I'm going to green idle right. I'm going to click on the arrow. I'm going to add a transition. My facing left is going to be false, and we're going to add moving is false. And then the last one I'm going to add is make transition, and I'm going to go to my transition itself. There we go. Again, we're going to do facing left is false, but moving is true. So I've now got all 4 of the different combinations. And what I can do here to see this working is I can drag the animator out kind of off into space here and look at my game. And if I run this, I do need to arrange my windows a little bit differently, but that's okay. We'll do that when it starts running. Okay, so she's idling right. And you can kind of see here when it's running that it is running this animation. Okay, and that's great. But what I do want to do is I want to see what happens when I change things. So I'm going to face her left now, and you're going to see she turned around. And now I'm going to say she's moving, and it switches into these different sets. Now I'm going to turn right, so I'm going to uncheck that facing left. She spins right, or she spins left, she spins right. One thing that I am noticing is sometimes there's a little bit of a delay between when I click it and when I go, and that's because of exit time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and stop this. I do want to look at some of these transitions here. Exit time doesn't seem to be working too badly. We'll just let this go. I'm not going to worry too much about that. So now what I want to do is I want to deal with the triggers. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead again, and I'm going to go from my any state. I'm going to make another transition to shoot left. And instead of transitions, I am going to use a transition. But my condition is just going to be shoot. And you're going to notice that shoot doesn't need a, because it's a trigger, it just happens. It doesn't need a true or false. Think about it as like a trigger. When you press it, it just happens once and that's it. But I also need her to be facing left. So we're going to add facing left is true. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing going into green shoot right, where I'm going to, again, add that shoot trigger, but also add a facing right, or facing left is false. Okay, so now if I run this, again, we can see her. We should be able to, hey, now I'm moving, and she seems to be moving. We turn her around. And now if I shoot, she's not going into that animation set. So we need to prioritize that. Let's see here. I'm going to pause for just a second here because I missed a step. And we're back. Sorry about that. I realized what I did wrong. I had done things in a little bit different order during my practice run, and that's why I got surprised here, because this worked perfectly for me in my original run, and it didn't just now. And I'm saying all this because it's a valuable lesson for you guys that sometimes if you just do things in a slightly different order, you get different results and you wonder why, and knowing why is a good thing. So I finally figured this out. And the real reason is because when I did this in my practice, I actually did my shoots first because I wanted to test out my triggers. And then I did my other ones after that. But this time with you guys, I did it in the opposite order because I felt like it was more logical. So as it turns out, in the end, if you click on any state, it actually lists all the transitions that come off of it, and you can see these down here. There's my shoot left and my shoot rights are at the end. And what it's going to do is when it attempts to make a transition, it's going to transition the first one it can find. Well, it's allowed to move into move left or move right, and so it's continuing to do that. And you can see that when I run, you can actually see that movement, so to speak, in that this cursor is continually, or not cursor, but this transition line is like continuously blinking. It's constantly refreshing itself. Well, if we go to any state and we manipulate the order, so if I hit shoot, which is a trigger, it's really never activating. Nothing is ever happening as a result of that. What's going on here is because it's able to hit these idles first, it never quite gets into shoot. And so what I'm going to do here is do some rearranging. I'm going to put my shoots and prioritize those. And then actually I'm going to do my moves next and my idles last, because really I do want movement to get prioritized just in case something bad happens. And so there we go. And now what you'll notice is if I click shoot, she's going to quickly shoot and then go back to her original movement. There is a little bit of a lag, and we'll work on fixing that in a little bit, but this is now finally looking the way I wanted it to look. So next thing that we can do here is we actually need to get some code in. Now, we aren't going to worry too much about collision, but we do need to get a little bit of physics. And the reason we need physics is, just like with our last project, we're going to do movement by physics using the input manager. And so we are going to need to do some quick adjustments here. And for that, we're going to need a rigid body 2D. So I'm going to go add component. We're going to add a rigid body 2D. I'm not going to worry about collision right now, but we do want to do this. And I'm going to go ahead and freeze my rotation Z because there's no reason for that right now. Everything else is probably good. I am going to eliminate gravity as well. We're not going to deal with gravity, although if this was a platformer or, you know, the Mega Man kind of a game that this character model would kind of imply that I should be using, that would make some sense. But for this is good. So the next thing I'm going to do is we are going to create some code. And now that we've got our different parameters here, this is going to be pretty easy to do. We aren't going to need a whole lot of code here to make this work. We're going to go ahead and open up some code. That's the one that we did last time. And actually, this is pretty close to what we want. So I'm just going to highlight and copy paste all this. But if you don't have it all from the earlier tutorials, we are going to go through it, and you can maybe do some screen grabs. I wouldn't screen grab this one because we are going to be editing it, but we'll be doing some other ones here in a second. So what I'm going to do here is on my player, I'm going to add component. I'm going to create one called player controller. And again, that isn't an existing script. So I'm going to click on new script, create an add. That is going to add it down here. And we're going to just double click on that. And I'm just going to copy paste my old one over. Now, if you use the copy paste method, one of the first things you're going to need to do, or if you ever have to rename a file or something, you're going to notice that my CS file is called playercontroller.cs. However, my class is called movement, and Unity is just going to lose its freaking brain over that. Unity does not like it. Your file names need to be the exact same as your script names. And so what we need to do here is change this so that they match. So I'm going to do player controller. That's going to fix a lot of my problems. Speed, if I remember right, last time we've done one of these, it seems like speed 30 is the way to go. Rigid body RB is fine. Vector 3 move vector is fine. And rigid body get component rigid body is probably pretty good. Now here's where we're going to get a little bit interesting is we've got this input.getAxis horizontal and my input.getAxis vertical. But what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to break this up a little bit. So I'm going to do First off, my vertical does not need to be anything. Oh, I'm using the 3D one. I stole this code from 3D. Let's switch this to a vector 2 called move vector, and we're going to create a new vector 2. And really, we just need our input horizontal and 0 because we are not moving in the z-axis at all for sure. And we don't really need to move in the y direction either. So this is going to be fine. Now, we also need to ask a couple quick questions of ourselves. And we really want to be figuring out, am I moving? And did I change direction? And so one of the other things that we need to do here is we need to kind of do a little bit of if statement programming. And this is a little new. I'm not going to get super deep into the code here on this one because that's not really what this tutorial is about, but we are going to need to do a little bit of code here. So we're going to do if move vector dot y is less than 0. What that means is we're moving left. I'm sorry, no, whoops, move vector dot x is less than 0. That means we're moving left. And that means we need to actually set our animation and tell our animation, hey, you're moving to the left right now. Okay. And so what we're going to do here is we actually need to tell the animation system that we're animating. So we're going to go up here and we need to actually add an animator component. So we're going to go animator. And it's very important you do animator, not animation. So we're going to go animator. And we're just going to call this anim. And just like we do with the rigid body, we're just going to find our own animators. So we're going to go our anim equals get component. Again, animator. It is very important that you do animator, not animation. And now what we want to do is we want to set our variables. Okay, so what we want to do is we actually want to change facing left. You can kind of see it over here on the side. We want to change that to true. So what we're going to do is we are going to say anim dot set bool, and we need to define it. And so that goes in quote marks. And our facing left bool is called facing left. And if you did a capitalization as I did capital F, capital L because I'm using camel case, then you need to match that perfectly here. So capital F, capital L. And then the second value is the actual value. If I'm moving left, if my vector x is less than 0, then that value should be true. Then I can do an else if my movement vector dot x is greater than 0. I basically need to do the same thing, only my facing left is false. So we're just going to copy paste that. And then the other thing that I need to do is account for the fact that I'm moving. Okay, so if I'm moving left, I'm moving. So we're going to also copy paste that set bool. And we're going to say moving is true. And that's going to be true for the other one. So we're just going to copy paste that, and we don't even need to adjust anything. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to figure if we're not moving at all, we need to turn our moving off. But we don't want to change our facing left direction. So we're just going to do else. And then we're going to set the bool. I could have done moving is going to be false. Okay, so this is a relatively simple script, but this should give us what we're looking for. And then we are going to set our rb.velocity to move vector times speed, which we've done before. And that should give us what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we're going to come back into our scene. And really, this should work if I haven't missed anything. So I am currently idling out, or at least I should be. As soon as it'll run. Okay, so I am idling. I'm going to move to the left, and she doesn't appear to actually be moving, but the animation's playing, and when I stop moving, she does stop. I'm trying to move to the right now, and I'm not getting the facing left animation to turn off. That's a little disconcerting, and I'm also not getting any movement to the... Oh, wait, it does look like she is moving, though. She is slowly making it to the right. So it looks... Oh, no, she isn't moving to the right. She's just staying in place. Okay, so we're close. Let's go back into our code and see what we've done wrong. That's not our code. That's our code. So let's take a look and see what we've got here. Some of this is doing pretty good. Let's see, moving left. Oh, I need to change my moving left to false. That was dumb. Okay, and I am moving, that's great. Fixed update is move vector times speed. I think maybe my speed is just a little too low. So let's go ahead and save that and see what happens. And what we should see is the movement working. Okay, so she's moving to the right. Okay, so I get movement to the right when I hold down the right key. I let go. I'm getting movement to the left when I hit the left key. When I let go, the idle's working. I'm a little disappointed by the fact that the movement doesn't appear to actually be moving. And I'm not sure exactly why that's happening. So I am going to click on player real fast. I want to see if I have missed anything. I think maybe I just need to notch my speed up. I thought 30 was enough, but maybe I'm just misremembering it. So we're going to try adding a little bit more speed now that my controls are working better. She still doesn't appear to be moving at all. She just is kind of running in place there. But we do have the animation set working, which is really what the goal of the tutorial was. I just want to know why my animation sets, or I'm sorry, why the movement isn't actually good. Let's see, new vector 2, my RB velocity. Not really sure why it's not moving. So I will pause that and check that in a minute, but now I want to work on getting that shooting animation working. So the shooting animation is a little bit different in that we do want to set that trigger. So what I'm going to do is we're going to check to see if the user triggers the shoot, and there is a built-in thing in my input manager for that. So I'm going to go to edit and see what it is. So if I go to edit project settings, which we've done this part before, I'm going to go to Input Manager, and one of my axes is actually Fire 1, so we'll use that. And Fire 1 is triggered with either mouse 0 or the left control click. It's a key or mouse button trigger with really high gravity and really high sensitivity. So we're just going to go ahead and use that. We'll use that one to see if that got hit. And so we are going to do another if statement that is if input dot, let's see here, get key, get access. Let's see. That was Fire 1. And if that happens, there is a way to test the actual shot on that. I will look actually, you know what? I'm going to look that up right now. There's a different way I want to do this. Okay, what we want is actually Unity or input.get button down fire one. So if we do unit input.get button down fire one, then that is just a it's a Boolean all on its own, so that's just going to work. Then we can do anim.setTrigger. So we're going to go ahead and do set trigger. And we are going to set trigger on shoot. Again, I need to match the capitalization on that. So I used a capital S. I'm still using a capital S. And that should allow either my left control or my mouse button to fire. So we're going to go ahead and save that. And go back into my project. And what we should have now is we should be able to shoot and we should be able to move. So if I click the mouse button, she's shooting. I'm able to run, and if I run while I'm or if I shoot while I'm running, she will stop real quick and shoot. And that's all working pretty good. Again, I still don't know why she's not moving. Maybe it's because I don't have a collision. Maybe I do need a collider on there. Do I need a collision box for that? Let's add a box collider 2D and find out. Let's see. Sure, why not? I didn't think I needed a box collider for rigid body, but maybe I do. Nope, that is still not fixing it. So I'm really not sure why she's not moving. I will figure that out and come back. Actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to pause and figure that out, and I will be back momentarily. So hold on just one moment. Okay, so we have figured this out. As it turns out, even experienced users can make newbie mistakes. So the problem is I was using a rigid body instead of a rigid body 2D, which, as I told you in the earlier tutorial, if you use the wrong one, it ain't gonna work. So I had a rigid body 2D on my actual sprite, like I should have. It's right there. Look at that. But in my code, because I had copy pasted, I had copy pasted a normal rigid body in instead of a rigid body 2D. So I'm going to go ahead and edit both the rigid body 2D there and the rigid body 2D down here. And as you can see, that's a little bit better. We're going to go file save. When I tested this, 300 was definitely too fast, so I'm going to put this back down to 30 like it probably should be. It might even need to be less than 30. We're going to go ahead and hit play. Come on. There it goes. And I can move to the right, I can move to the left. Even then, 30 is probably a little too quick. We're not even really seeing the animations there. So I'm going to nudge that down to, I don't know, 10? Let's see here, where's my speed? There it is. I'm going to nudge that speed back down to about, I don't know, 10. Maybe even 5, we'll see. And she's running across the screen. That actually is feeling pretty good. And when she stops, she goes into her idle. If I shoot, she shoots. I can run. I can be moving and shoot at the same time, although the animation does get a little bit weird when I do that. But she will shoot like she should. She's moving, she's shooting, she's doing what she's supposed to do. That's a great stopping point for this. There is some issues with it being, not as smooth as it could be. Those are all kind of advanced things to fix, and it's kind of beyond the scope of the tutorial, but we'll probably do some more tutorials on this later. So just to review what we've done today. First off, we learned how to do some bug fixing. I did go back and look at some other things. I was like, oh no, rigid body. So that is one of the first things that we learned. We also learned how to take multiple animation sets and put them into an Animator controller, which is what we've got here. We kind of learned what the any state does. We learned about transitions. We learned about variables, actually technically parameters. We learned how to add parameters into transitions. And we learned how to do some very basic coding and basically activate those, set those booleans and activate those triggers. So we've covered a good amount of ground today. As always, if this tutorial was helpful for you, please like and subscribe. Other than that, we are going to go ahead and close. As always, in closing, keep on creating. Have a great day, everybody.